Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about the film Don't Breathe. Don't Breathe is a very economical, concept-heavy movie. In fact, it cares more about being within its concept and giving you thrills than really anything else. In some ways, it's the concept movie of your dreams, or maybe my dreams. I don't know about your dreams. It's kind of that tense, well-built, well-structured thrill rides of a movie that you kind of almost take for granted and don't think about how precise you really have to be to get this kind of thing to work. And Don't Breathe kind of cares more about all that than maybe actual characters or really saying much of anything. But did you really come to see Don't Breathe for anything else? I mean, once you see the trailer, you kind of know what you're getting in for, and it feels like a very cheaper genre economical film that kind of just works in spite of its cheaper production. I was kind of on the edge of my seat most of the time, and that's really what the film honestly cares about. There's not a lot of it that's outside of the house. Most of it is within the house. It kind of cuts the chase pretty quickly and doesn't really honestly even have that much dialogue, come to think of it. It's more about giving you thrills and scares and having the audience react to things, which frankly the audience I saw it with definitely did. I heard more screams of "get out of that fucking house already" than I've heard from any movie before, but not in a way of frustration, just in a way to give you kind of a release with all of the tension that was going on and being shown to you on screen. I was kind of waiting for this film because seeing the trailers over and over again, I just love the entire concept. I was very excited for a film like Don't Breathe. And if you're excited by economical storytelling and the cheap beer mentality of horror movies, Don't Breathe will go down just as easy as a cold, cheap beer always does. A group of house robbers who have been making the rounds through Detroit, where they live in a very economically depressed situation, if you know what's going on in Detroit. And those three, Rocky, Alex, and Money, and they use Alex's connections with his dad's security company to break into these homes and steal a little bit, but they aren't really making all that much money. And Rocky, played by Jane Levy, very much wants to leave Detroit and never come back. She hates her mother. Her mother's pretty terrible. It's a pretty terrible situation. So they get a tip about a guy who's sitting on tons of money in his house, and they find out he is also blind, and they decide to break into his house and steal all his money even though he is blind, and find out that even though he is blind, he's ex-military, and he kills Money and starts going after Alex and Rocky as they try to sneak away in the house, away from the blind man, and hopefully get out with the money before he gets them, or they stumble onto more surprises as they're stuck in this dark house hiding from the blind man. This was directed by Fede Alvarez, I think that's how you say his name. He directed the Evil Dead remake, which came out about 3 years ago, I believe. And he apparently made this film as a reaction to the criticism of that movie, that it was too gory. Apparently it actually had the record for most blood on set, which I think is funny. He apparently wanted to make a film that didn't rely on gore, as he felt this film has no blood, which I don't think that's true, but relied more on suspense and was cheaper, more tense, and I guess was a little more leaner. And I think he definitely pulled that off, and this feels very genre, even though I don't know of a genre of like robbing a blind ex-military guy by three robbers in Detroit and stuff, but it feels genre, even though, you know, it isn't technically, it's not like you're watching like an action movie and you know the genre itself and all the genre rules. This feels genre. It feels almost like a TV movie from the 70s, like Bad Ronald or something, that you kind of found through a friend that taped it off of a TV rebroadcast that he found out about in the 90s and then converted to DVD, or maybe that's just my life. Don't Breathe feels like that kind of thing. It lives definitely in that world, and in that world from people who understand how to do simple genre and thrill an audience, and Fede Alvarez definitely understands that. I actually liked his Evil Dead just because it really was not like Sam Raimi's Evil Dead. It was like a separate kind of a thing. I feel like he's done another movie, but I'm not sure. But I think with Don't Breathe, he really makes a real genre, well-constructed thriller classic. This is a very, very tight movie. I love economical storytelling because it really shows you what you can do with very simple things, which I don't think a lot of filmmakers can do. They always have to have a scene to explain something or something like that. Now, that's I guess some people complain to the detriment, as these characters are kind of like loose outlines almost. I mean, literally a character's called the Blind Man. You're getting into Walter Hill levels of deconstruction deconstruction, like in The Driver or something, when none of the characters have character names. They're just like the driver, the cop, the girl, and so forth. And I guess this is kind of trying to do that thing, although it's not actually using that Walter Hill concept. But the idea of deconstruction is very much in that. The economical school of thought is actually coming from a way of deconstruction and deconstructing genre to its very basic elements. And in some way that shows how far you can really take a story and what you can tell with a story and what you can really do with a story, and it's always very interesting. We've had economical thrill rides this summer with something like The Shallows, but I think this is actually a lot better than The Shallows because it just keeps going and going with an interesting concept. I guess you could be upset that he's not having as much fun with these characters, but I like how like it's a smooth 90 minutes. It's very condensed. It's only about this thing. Like, can you really complain about that? I've read reviews from people like, this is a great genre movie, but he has more promise than just these kind of things. But it's like, why am I arguing with the grilled cheese sandwich and asking it to be a lasagna? I'm very happy with this grilled cheese sandwich, and it's doing exactly what I wanted it to do. And I think Don't Breathe very much does that. It does exactly what you want from it, and if you've seen the trailers and you're excited to see a movie like Don't Breathe, that's what it's giving to you, and asking it to give you more is semi-missing the point of it. It's not about the economy in Detroit and these kids who are trying to make some sort of money to get out. It's really about the thrills in the house, and since most of the film is just that, rather than having like a half hour of prologue that you probably weren't going to remember and or like not in there, is fucking fine with me. I like that it just cut to the chase. It's like a no bullshit, almost like John Carpenter would probably like a movie like this, or at least it reminds me of his type of economical storytelling. And it's probably not for most people. It's not for anyone who's too pretentious to maybe see a horror movie in general, but what they're missing out is really fine-tuned filmmaking. Maybe it's fine-tuned filmmaking that cares more about the thrill ride of filmmaking, and I've read critics compare this to James Wan and what he did with the Conjuring films, and I agree with that, and this is a lot of fun, much like the James Wan Conjuring movies and his Insidious movies as well, to see with an audience. It's a lot of fun to see with an audience. In fact, I really recommend you see it in the theater, or at least with friends who are going to react to things. I had a lot of fun with that, and it has a lot of just like reaction moments, and it plays with the audience in a way. And I like when horror does that. I feel like we stay away from that, and that doesn't seem as cool in some ways, but if you really like horror, you like different kinds of it, and I think this plays with that. You know, I guess this isn't technically horror, but to me it kind of plays in such a horror way. We might as well call it that. I guess you want to call it a thriller, but you know, you probably want to call those graphic novels as well, so who cares. And I even liked a lot of the acting in this. Never really liked Stephen Lang that much. I mean, I guess the most in Avatar or Conan the Barbarian. I mean, I've never really liked Stephen Lang that much, and I liked him a lot in this. He shows a lot of range. I was surprised by his voice in this. When he does speak, is very scary and feels like outer body. It feels like someone dubbed his voice. It's not the voice you're used to with Stephen Lang. There's a real physicality. Everyone has a real physicality to this film. If you're in this film, you really know how to act in a very physical way, and it's very impressive. Stephen Lang does that very well. It does, you know, play with how much he's strangling them and fighting them and stuff. Again, I don't want realism from this. I wanted thrills, and their performances helped bring that. Jane Levy, this is her second film with this director, as she was in the Evil Dead movie, and they work very well together. I can honestly see her being a very great horror heroine. She has this kind of like worn quality to her face. That's not to be disrespectful or something. I thought it actually worked well for the part and showed that she'd like lived to life and that she, you know, kind of wanted to get out of there. It's probably the first time I've liked Dylan Minnette, I guess, who is also in Goosebumps, the only other thing I've seen him in. He actually showed me he could actually act. Even though he was doing kind of a loose caricature of a character, he was still good at it. I think this kind of plays in that I brought up 70s TV movies or horror movies like Bad Realm or something, and you're playing these kind of archetypes, but you kind of have to do something with them, which is kind of something you used to see in classic 70s TV, you know, I'm talking about TV movies, of course, but like 70s kind of genre grindhouse movies, you'd have to do that. It's interesting to see modern actors take that on, because I think a lot of times you think, well, modern actors can't do that because you don't see them do that, so why would you think they could do that? But seeing them actually do that, it makes me think, oh shit, you know, these guys are actually fairly talented. It gives me a little more faith in them. I don't know if they'll ever get to do that again in anything, and I don't think they will. This kind of a film is rare in that It's a concept film that you don't see and go, oh yeah, you know, I saw that and it did the thing and I went home and I had pizza. And Don't Breathe has a lot of fun with its concept. It'll mainly having you go, oh shit, the movie where the kids rob that blind guy is actually really cool and fucked up and crazy and thrilling, and I had a great time. You should probably see it. It's a movie I actually really love. It's probably going to be the nice treats of the summer that it came along in a very economical, digestible, audience-friendly way that makes you kind of love storytelling at the movies in a very cheap beer way that a lot of filmmakers can't really do in this type of way. I think that's amazing about horror movies and horror filmmaking, and shows a real willingness to knock out the pretension and trying to do anything else and just care about the thrills. And maybe that's not as crazy. Maybe you want something more from Don't Breathe, but why would you? I mean, this is just such an entertaining, fun movie. I was just so absolutely happy with it. It had this kind of tense feeling going on before. I almost felt like something bad was going to happen, and then when they were in the house, I saw all those bad things. It moves at such a pace. Even the beginning is moving at a crazy pace. I felt like I was like, my adrenaline was pumping up before anything crazy happened. Like I was almost preparing myself. It was like the rhythm of the editing and the movie was getting me to do that in an odd way. It was very interesting how quickly they just give you the bare bones that you need to know. It's very good at geography of the house, so you understand where these people are in relation to one another. It's very good at setting things up automatically. It understands what it's doing very well in a way that reminds you of a really well-built kind of thriller horror movie. Geography in films where you're playing with a space, mainly in action and in horror, is so fucking important, and this film understands that very well, so you understand it. They cheat with it a little, but they do get you set up so you feel like you understand the house, which is more important than you think it is. This is more about being a craftsman than kind of a crazy auteur with a different vision that'll blow you away, but sometimes being a craftsman is a unique auteur voice in itself. But I love just seeing the craftsmanness of just genre filmmaking at large. And sure, this isn't an exact genre, and maybe I'm just putting on my own crap on this, but it was a hell of a thrilling, cheap, kind of economical storytelling kind of a movie in the way I love them, and I was very happy with Don't Breathe. And I think if you are excited for a movie like Don't Breathe and you just see this and go, oh man, this is gonna be good, Don't Breathe is not going to disappoint you at all, and you will be yelling in the theater and laughing in the theater like everyone else, and it will give you a thrill ride that you wanted from a concept in a movie like this. So if you have seen Don't Breathe and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.